Just Breathe Live is a YouTube live stream where youth ministry has a say. Hosts Shannon Harper and Eric Bliss interview youth and adult badasses who hold a vision of liberal, religious youth ministry that is both life-saving and spirit-lifting. Come join us via the chat for real-time conversations where your ideas matter and your questions get answered. Explore faith, spirituality, and life purpose as never before. And above all, bring your authentic self and just breathe.
Hello.
I never want to be the first to turn on my video. I'm always like, who's gonna do it?
We should count down.
Oh, that's a great idea. But when do we start counting?
I don't know. We'll get the logistics. Welcome,
Okay.
everyone. We are so glad that you're joining us, either live or you're watching this recorded. We are here tonight. We're going to talk about resonance
And activism.
and activism. I'm super excited. I can't wait to introduce to you our guest. Yeah, let's see. What's going on here? How are we?
What is going on? Wow. Does it feel to you, Shannon, like everyone's trying to cram everything in before Christmas?
Yes, I feel more like scattered, more like got to do so much this year than I have in several years.
I've never been this busy in December. Usually it's like kind of slowing down, unless you're in a congregation. I feel for y'all, with the holiday pageant and whatnot. But like for a congregational life, it's usually it slows down a little bit, but it has just gone nonstop. Compass was a little bit of that. Big success. Shout out to the Compass program team and the rest of the planners, Amy Kent, the admin team, Betty Clark, Kathy Charles, who put on this amazing event,
Our
national
admins
event.
were amazing.
They were. And because of Compass, we have a special guest, which we'll announce at the end of the episode for January.
So Compass was an online conference that the UUA put on, Congregational Life in the UUA. Bliss and I were both on the team, the Compass team. I was in the outreach. Bliss was in the program. Bliss got some pretty amazing guests for Compass. Yeah, that was so much fun. And we are super excited to share with everyone our interview with, are we allowed to say it? Can we say who it was?
We can say it. I do we want to say it now or do we want to keep people on the edge of their seat?
Ooh,
It's up to you.
I think we drop it. I think we name drop now, so that
Okay.
people are like, okay, yeah, they're
All
cool.
right.
And we're definitely gonna.
All right,
Oh,
you
and
do it.
Amy just pointed out to me that you can still register for Compass. So all of the content for Compass was recorded, and you can still watch and interact. There's 2 wonderful worships. One of the worships can actually be used by your congregation. On like for a Sunday, you can just, it's like a plug and play. If you need to take a Sunday off and want to use the worship that they did today.
Keynotes by Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs and Dr.
So
Robert
amazing.
Bednarczyk and our mystery guest from
Our
January.
mystery guest.
All right, who are they?
Bliss and I got to interview Rising Appalachia. What? Okay, and so you might not know who Rising Appalachia are, but if you're UU in UU spaces, you probably heard their music because we've been using a lot of their music lately. It's just the kind of folky, resonant kind of stuff that we love. We got to do an interview with them, and
Did we mention that?
Did we mention the interview?
Oh, we're just best friends with them.
We're
that's all.
best friends now.
Besties.
I'm sure they can. Yeah, they've got us on speed dial. I'm sure.
You mentioned Christmas cards. I'm checking my mail every day.
Totally. No, it was a really fun interview. And we asked them some really specific questions about what it was like to be a young person growing up, if they were always so cool on the banjo, or if that was something that came to them, after they left their young adult years, that kind of thing. So you should totally tune in and hear that interview. And if you register for Compass, you will hear a concert that they put on for Compass. So some new stuff. They just put out a new album, and they also have some oldies but goodies, some favorites in the concert. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, it's all original content just for Compass. It's a concert you won't see any other place on the web. You can't find it on YouTube. You can't find it on their website. It just belongs to Compass. And we'll see them. The second half of their interview will be shared January 9th, our episode, the second Sunday in January.
And then in January, we're also moving to 2 shows a month, which is exciting. So we're going to do one on January 9th and then another on January
23rd. Is that right?
Okay, don't quote us on that, but 2 weeks later.
Check it out.
Yes.
So let's check in, shall we? Because we have a lovely guest with us tonight. And we'll introduce them in just a moment. But let's check in. When was a time that you felt deeply listened to, Shannon? And guests, feel free to check in the comment section of YouTube.
I was thinking about this question, and I recently, not that long ago, I haven't been with colleagues or friends for a while, but I did recently spend a little bit of time, just a couple days, in a house in Vermont, with some friends, some colleague friends, people in UU adjacent also areas. There was maybe 6 of us, and we spent so much time just sitting around a table talking about work stuff, talking about one person would bring up, I'm dealing with this situation, and then all of us just listening, and then being able to ask do the thing where you ask the questions. Well, how was that? And and tell me more about this. And I heard you say this, and it was so wonderful to both felt like I was being heard, felt like I could talk to them about all these things, and I could get if I wanted advice, I could say I want advice here. If I wanted to be I don't need advice, I just want to just share with you what's going on, that could happen too. But also it being reciprocal, right? So I also had the opportunity to do deep listening with them and offer whatever they asked for. It was a really magical time. And I think it was even more magical because it was after a long span of not being able to be with people and having those conversations.
Vermont. I'm so jealous. I'm jealous. I thought of a couple different situations, but I think the one that rises to the fore is I have a spiritual coach. His name is Chuck Blocker, and he's tremendous. He lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We meet once a month, and he's transformed my life. I cannot say enough about spiritual coaching, spiritual direction, spiritual companionship. If you have an opportunity to do it, JUUst and others, check it out. He challenges me to lean into spiritual practice and ask me questions about what is your spirit, where's your spirit at, and being able to share that in a confidential space with someone who deeply listens and also reflects back is powerful stuff, and it's therapeutic, but it also has got me doing spiritual practice in ways that I don't think I could have gotten to on my own. It's beautiful stuff.
Eric, can I ask you a question? Is a spiritual coach like a spiritual director or a spiritual companion? There's different names for that. Is that?
Yeah, as far as I know, there may be some nuances there, but for the most part, I believe they're essentially the same. I did it through the Wellspring program which is, Linnea Nelson. Shout out to her, the work that she does with Wellspring, which is support for religious educators, religious professionals, lay leaders. It's a wonderful program if you haven't checked it out. But, we should invite Linnea on the show.
I would love that. And I was going to say also, I'm in a group spiritual direction course with some of our colleagues in congregational life are putting this on. And there's a whole cohort of youth and young adults who are taking this group spiritual direction course. And so we're putting out, really amazing young people who are prepared to do that kind of coaching in group sessions with other, people of all ages, which is super exciting. We should totally have some of those people on, because we have some great conversations in that group. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Shall we breathe together?
Yes.
All right. Let's do it. I invite everyone who's listening, whether you are listening in real time or afterward, or hey, if you are a time traveler and you can do this some other way, my hat's off to you. Sorry, I'm feeling silly tonight, Shannon. I apologize. Anyway, get comfortable. Whomever you are welcome here. Relax as you are able. And I invite you to take 3 deep belly breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Really fill your abdomen with air. Here we go. And on the last one, I want you to say either out loud or in your mind, feeling centered. Okay, here we go. Feeling centered. All right. Gratitude to you all. Gratitude to my co-host. And most of all, gratitude to our guest.
It's time. It's time to introduce our fantastic guest. Take it, Eric.
I've been talking. You want me to do it?
I mean, it's in the script under your
I
name.
know. We lost one of our guests, y'all. So we're kind of...
Y'all probably don't even realize that we use a script. How would you know? Because we just are so fluid with this, right? Did I give away a secret?
Well, we have an organization to it, but we're riffing a little bit. All right. Yeah. Do you want me to? Shall I? Okay. Our guest tonight, I'm super excited. I met this individual, I don't know when we met, but we worked together on an emerging adult conference this past late summer called Hugs. And this wonderful individual led a workshop on this very subject. And it blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. And I said, we have to have them on. Martha Durkee Newman, she, her, is a UU young adult originally from Washington State, now living in Boston, Massachusetts. What? Martha serves as the Director of Religious Education at First Parish in Malden. Shout out to DREs everywhere, and is a second-year seminarian at Harvard Divinity School. She also works as an electoral political trainer, supporting grassroots progressive candidates for public office in Massachusetts. Shout out to Carrie McDonald, who got elected for city council in a suburb of Boston. Martha is passionate about interfaith solidarity, abolition, and transformative justice. She can often be found reading, hiking, and conducting Zoom finger puppet theater. We have to ask a question about that.
I want to see that. No.
All right. Martha, are you with us? Hey.
Hello. Hi, Bliss. Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so glad that you're here.
I am so happy to be here, and congrats on getting Rising Appalachia. That's so exciting. I can't wait to watch your interview.
We're up and coming.
Yeah, you guys are
talk show hosts.
We won't forget the little people. I promise.
Okay.
I'm just
Bliss,
kidding.
I think there's a chance that you've known me since I was a PNW con youth in the early 20 teens.
I think so.
Did
Did
that
you go to one of our
pop?
chaplain trainings back in the day?
Yes, I did. I was chaplain trained in the Pacific Western region in 2013
Okay. Mm-hmm.
or 2014.
Awesome.
Whoa. Bliss, do you feel old?
Every day.
Oh,
Every day.
youth that were in our programs are now religious educators.
It's right.
They're ministers too, actually. Like they're not just religious educators, ministers,
And doing what? And
seminarians,
doing
yeah.
amazing ministry. And doing amazing ministry.
Oh yeah.
We do some amazing things with our young people, and we get our young people to go on. And right now I'm facilitating and administering the OWL program, which I was a participant in when I was 13. And that feels like a fun full circle moment for me.
Such important work.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
Al. Love Al. So do you want to check in, Martha, with our check-in question? What's the last time you felt deeply listened to?
I love that question. And I loved getting to hear your guys' stories. So thank you for checking in with that question. Your stories made me feel listened to. I think that one of the things that pops into my head is recently I was talking to a really dear friend of mine, and I was explaining what I felt like was a really complicated problem that I was having in a lot of different pieces, and I had a lot of feelings about the problem. And my friend asked really, really good questions about how I was feeling in different parts of the problem. And then the friend took my words and offered me a metaphor for what my problem was that was exactly spot on. And that made me feel really listened to, because they had taken the essence of what I had said, they made it a little less complicated, and they offered me the gift of a really well-fitting metaphor. And the metaphor was really helpful for giving me a way forward with my problem. And it made me feel really listened to.
I love a good metaphor.
I love a good metaphor.
Metaphors are awesome. Similes, hyperboles. I get them confused, frankly.
We love
Analogies.
a well-placed literary device.
Yes. Yeah. I always thought analogies and metaphors, that feels like the same thing. I'm sure a listener will inform us and let us know what the
One of our
Please
high school
do.
teachers is going to call up and be like, "Are you kidding?"
one of our high school teachers, one of our high schoolers will call up and let us know. It's a little
Yep,
closer to
right.
the
That's so right.
Oh, okay. So let's get into this interview because I know we have questions. I'm gonna get to them, but I want to say when Bliss was like, Martha can come on and talk about resonance, I was like, resonance, like what does that even mean? Like I was fascinated because again, I love a good analogy. I'm like resonance, like oh, sound and how it carries and all of these things. So I was truly like very curious about it. And then I read the description that you the blurb that you gave us, which we then told lots of people about. We sent that blurb out. I think it might be even on Instagram. I'm not sure. It was a good blurb. And so I'm super excited to talk with you now about that and about how the connection to justice work and activism and organizing. So.
And we're not just going to talk about resonance, we're going to do it, right?
Yes, let's do
We're
it.
going to do it.
Is this the first time we've done an actual practice on Just Breathe Live? I mean, except for the practices that we begin and end with, but like, I think this might be the actual first time a guest has done a practice with us. It's very exciting.
I'm so excited. That sounds great. Would it be helpful if I talk a little bit about resonance and what it is and how I conceptualize of it to kind of kick off?
Yeah, for the people who didn't read the blurb.
Heck
Let
yeah.
us know. Tell us about it.
So it's funny that I was just thinking about perfect metaphors, because I think that this is kind of a really perfect, maybe perfect's the wrong word, a really strong metaphor. So I will give credit where credit's due. If folks know the Movimiento Cosecha, which is a national organization that works on supporting 11 million undocumented folks in the United States. There's an amazing Cosecha chapter here in Massachusetts. And I learned this practice by being a Cosecha ally or somebody who is supporting that work from the outside. So I was trained in that movement, in this practice, and I've used it all over the place in my life. So I want to honor those folks who came before me and showed me this practice. So the way that I think about this, and I will tell you, and your listeners and watchers are going to have to follow up with me in the comments, because I have led this workshop before, and I am not a musician, and I'm also not a sound technician. So if my words aren't the right words, you folks are going to have to tell me. But I have now done a lot of research about tuning forks, which is not something I ever expected to have a lot of information about in my life. But here I am, a tuning fork not expert, having a very small knowledge about tuning forks. So the way that I understand tuning forks, when you have two tuning forks in the same room, and I will tell you, my owl 13-year-old youth could probably explain this to me, because they know a lot about science right now. So when you have two tuning forks in the same room, when you hit one pair of tuning forks, they resonate, and the others start to resonate also on the same frequency, despite never being hit. So you hit these tuning forks, and these tuning forks start to resonate because of some cool stuff in the air, that's the part I have yet to figure out. But the metaphor is, when you hit these tuning forks, something in these tuning forks resonates on the same frequency as these ones. So then they're resonating together, and they're doing these mimicking movements together in the air, despite the fact that these ones have never been hit. I love that. That makes me feel good. Like that knowing that is a thing that happens in my universe feels good in my body. And so when I learned about this practice, I was then taught that one of the ways that we use the practice of acoustic resonance in organizing and advocacy spaces is applying acoustic resonance to storytelling. So when somebody tells a story, you can use acoustic resonance as a different way of engaging deep listening. And this is actually really hard to do. And it has been hard for me to do. And I've had to learn and train myself how to do this as a spiritual practice and as an organizing strategy. It is totally both, which the best ones are. And so the way that I think about this is, when somebody is telling me a story, especially something personal, and something that comes from the heart, I listen with resonance, not for the things I don't understand, the questions I have, the stories that I want to tell that person about my own life experience that connects, not even the moments of connection. Instead, I pay attention in my own body to when I resonate on the same frequency. So when something that person says in their story causes my tuning fork self to resonate on the same wavelength. And it's on those moments of some kind of deeper, different level of connection that then we build from. And it's so many things. It's magic. If you are, I don't know y'all's theologies, but that is spirit, that is God, that is the divine. I don't know what it is. That's up to you. It's up to the language that works for you. But there's something present in that resonating.
Wow. That is amazing.
It's amazing.
I want to know what the magic things in the air are that make these invisible things. And that's fantastic.
I will tell you, as with most things in our universe, I'm sure there is both a scientific and a theological explanation. There is something about airwaves, and there's also something about God. And I can't tell you which one it is. To ask me on any given day, my answer might be different.
I feel like there's also these connections to science, like to biology. And I don't know biology well, but I feel like I've also read that like these connections of biological beings that mimic or resonate with each other.
Yeah. I think there's tons of examples. I think of principles of emergent strategy, and this kind of when one monarch butterfly in one part of the world flaps its wings and someone else on the other side of the world flaps their wings, like nature is doing this resonance. And I think when I think about this spiritual practice, I think about how we can move ourselves and bodies in tune with what our natural world is doing already, what these processes are, how we learn. I'm thinking of Robin Wall Kimmerer and Braden Stuka. I'm thinking of these amazing movement leaders that we have the amazing gift of being able to access their wisdom and what they're telling us about how we listen to trees and birds and tuning forks and get better at doing this.
Biologically, that makes me wonder about mutualism, organisms that work together. And, how did that first interactions start. You know, the swollen thorn acacia and the leafcutter ant. Like they have this very intricate relationship where the swollen thorn creates protein packets for the ants to eat, and hollow thorns for them to live in, and these nectaries where they release sugar, a sugary solution that they eat, and the ants protect the tree and plant their eggs, or lay their eggs in those thorns. I mean, obviously that's a relationship that's developed over millennia, and yet that the first time it happened, was it resonance? You know, I don't know. These are questions that come to me. Interesting stuff. So Martha, what areas of active, you know, we heard a little bit about what you do in your bio, but tell us a little bit about how you've employed resonance in the areas of activism where you are engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I learned this practice from Movimiento Cosecha, and that was the first place I got to try out and practice this practice, was in doing some solidarity work with undocumented folks in my community and immigrants in my community. So that's the first place, and I've done some solidarity work in Boston, in and around spaces and communities that are making sure everyone is able to live here safely. So that's kind of where I learned this practice. I've gotten to take it into a lot of different spaces. Right now I work, as I said in my bio, I get to do my two favorite things in the world, which are religion and politics. I get to work with kids in our tradition who are just awesome, and the present, past, and future of our faith movement. And so that's really exciting, is getting to work with our kids. And then I also work on helping people run for office. And so those are both places where I try to bring this practice when I'm listening deeply with our kids and I'm talking to elected officials. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of work recently with young adults in our tradition, and thinking about where our tradition is, where we're going, what are some of the directions that we want to be moving in. I've gotten to do some really cool listening work with some young people in our tradition. That's been amazing. But my like background in organizing and activism, I got a lot of training in college as a student organizer. And I love student organizing. I think student organizing is awesome, and is a place where young people really get trained in what community organizing looks like on kind of a micro scale. College campuses are these places where often the power structures are a little bit more visible than elsewhere in society. You know what the hierarchy looks like, and figuring out where the pressure points are on a campus. Doing power mapping was something I learned how to do on a college campus, and then got to take into spaces that I was in union organizing and environmental justice work. And that was really cool. So I have a background in doing work around sexual violence prevention on college campuses and Title IX. And that's really a very treasured movement home for me, is in Title IX protection and defense work, and working with survivors of sexual assault and sexual abuse. I also have done some work in gun violence prevention and peace and anti-war work. And that's been really powerful, demilitarization work. And that's a place where I've used this practice of resonance, especially when talking with folks who are really different than me, come from different backgrounds than me, about why it matters that we demilitarize our communities, and what that looks like on the ground, what it looks like to have wars at home and abroad, and how we kind of work on the roots of violence in our society and how we take them apart. So those are some places that really hold a lot of meaning for me, and I've gotten to be and use this practice.
So Martha, I have all these logistical questions about the practice. But you're going to do the practice with us. So I feel like let's do the practice.
Let's do it.
A lot of my questions might be answered. And then I think people will get a better idea of what we're really talking about, and then we can talk more about it. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So here's how we'll practice this, is that I will share with you a story from my life, a short story, and what I want you to listen for. And I want you to listen to me, but I also want you to listen to you and to your own body, and figure out the places in my story or the words that I say that cause your tuning fork self to resonate. And then at the end of my story, I'm just going to ask you what those places or words were. And I don't need you to explain or tell me why. You don't have to do an exegesis on your feeling, or tell me like, I felt this way because. I want you to say afterwards, I experienced resonance when you said X or when you felt Y or whatnot. Ready? Okay. A story for you. So once in 2017, I was working with Movimiento Cosecha here in Boston, Massachusetts. And there were friends of ours who were detained inside the South Bay Detention Center. And we decided to do a direct action of blocking the doors of the detention center with our bodies to just business as usual and stop people from being able to go in and out of the detention center. So I was organized into this action. I was not an organizer of this action. Somebody who had a relationship with me called me and said, we need you. And I said, yes, I can do this. And that felt good. And so all of us gathered in a field kind of near the detention center. And I was kind of new to using my spiritual practices in social justice work. I'd been in a lot of very secular movement spaces. And we all took hands and we all closed our eyes and we all prayed together. And I'm still getting used to prayer. I was raised UU. And so I'm still working on my relationship to prayer. And it's getting a lot better. And that's really exciting. But I wasn't used to praying together like that. But we all held hands and closed our eyes. And someone led us in a prayer. And I felt really connected. I felt like the people had my back and they were holding my hands. And I felt like they really had my back. And then we sang together. And then we all marched over to the South Bay Detention Center and we sat down and we blockaded it and I pushed my back up against the doors and somebody held my arms on both sides. And then we sat there as long as we could and we sang the same song over and over, which is really helpful because I don't think there was anything else I could do except focus on singing that one song. And we sang over and over and over. And we held our arms and I felt really strong. And I felt a little scared, but I also felt really strong. And I knew that I had my friends with me and my people there. And the police came and they started arresting some of us. And there were a couple of friends of mine who are UU ministers. And I was watching them get arrested and they were wearing their clergy collars and they started singing songs from my faith that I recognized, songs of my own tradition that I recognized from my childhood. And that was really cool. And that was really cool to see these ministers that I knew and respected singing these hymns that I knew. And I started singing those hymns too. And it felt really, really powerful. And I was also nervous about my friends getting arrested. So we were able to hold down that detention center for a little while. And then some of us got arrested. And afterwards, we all met up in a big circle, the ones of us who were not arrested, and we got together all of our cash bail, and cash bail is not a thing we should ever have, in my opinion. And we went to the jails to be there with our friends, and we walked and we kept singing, and we walked through Boston at the end of the action singing these songs together. And I felt not alone. And eventually we got some of our people free from that detention center. And actually, due to a lot of organizing that's happened in this community, that detention center no longer has a contract with ICE and people are no longer detained there. The end.
I have chills.
What a beautiful story. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. So I'm curious if there were moments in my story or words that I used or places where you experienced a feeling of resonance.
So for me, it's I'm a very visual person. So like when I hear a story, I'm imagining and picturing. And there were two parts where I was like that picture just feels well, okay. So the first time was when you talked about prayer and you said, I was raised UU and I'm still coming to terms with prayer. I was not raised UU. I was raised in a faith that does pray together. And I am still coming to terms with prayer, so it was just like that. Oh, but it's not just, whether or not you've grown up with it or not, but I still have that, like praying in groups still brings around this thing that I don't I'm still coming to terms with it. Not totally against, but still coming to terms with it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that you said was the visual, was just the visual of the arms locked and the strength, of being together, like being scared and vulnerable alone. But almost like I imagine like people almost like holding each other up, because you're locked, right? You can't fall when you're all locked. That was a really powerful visual for me. That kind of that gave me chills. Like for me that was the moment in the story where I was like, "Ooh, this is a good story," right?
Thank you.
What about you, Bliss?
Well, first of all, yeah, what a powerful story. And I had a lot of feels. I was a DRE at First Unitarian Denver for 6 years, and during over a year of that time, we had an individual living in sanctuary with us, someone who I'm still very close with. We regularly text and check in on our families. And so this is an area of passion for me as well. So when you began with the story, the beginning resonated, because I share that same passion, and I know a lot of you used to, as well as a lot of other people of faith. It's funny, the prayer piece, because I grew up UU. I was dedicated at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church, Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee. But I grew up in the South, and my stepfather is a Methodist. We floated in and out of U spaces and other Christian churches, and my family, we pray every night together. So when you talk about praying together, it makes me think of my family, makes me think of my kids, makes me think about manifesting goodness and asking for forgiveness and sharing gratitude with a meal. So for me, prayer is like, it's the water I want to swim in, as a religious being. So very, you talking about getting together and praying with people, especially people you don't know very well. I mean, that's a vulnerable moment. That's crossing a threshold, as Reverend Alicia Ford says. So that resonated. The other piece that resonated was singing songs together. I think some of it is the Christmas season, this holiday season. We've got Alexa playing Christmas songs on Pandora nonstop. Like my wife would have them playing after Halloween if my sons and I were into it. We Thanksgiving is an important holiday for us, minus the colonial trappings. But singing songs together, I mean, really powerful, and thinking about using that as a way to like be united, speak of resonating, talking about resonating. I mean, you're making music together and you're using it to both like drive out evil and also keep hope in your heart during that that had to be I can only imagine how scary that was during that time. So yeah, wow.
Yeah, thank you both. That is so powerful. I love hearing that. And I think that it's interesting too, because you both have different relationships to prayer, right? But when I spoke about just that I had feelings about praying together, y'all resonated, right? And had this moment of depth. And I think like accessing that depth of, we all come from different places, different relationships to this spiritual practice, but accessing that depth is something that brings us into deeper fellowship with one another. And when I think about this practice for solidarity, that means we love each other deeper when we know each other deeper and when we're resonating with each other. And so I think of a time when this practice was used with me, where Movimiento Cosecha right now in Massachusetts is doing a campaign to support driver's licenses for all, licencias para todos. And at the beginning, when they launched this campaign, I thought, driver's license for all, sure, that sounds good. That sounds important. I'm for it. And then I entered into a resonance practice around it, where people shared experiences of driving without a license and being undocumented, and how scary it was, being pulled over without a license and how scary it was, and talked about the emotions there. And I remember listening to members of my community sharing these stories and thinking, oh my gosh, I remember when I didn't register my car and I was driving and I got so nervous or whatever, having these moments of resonance, and the stakes for me are way different, and how that brought me weight. And now I'm like, licencias para todos, like everybody needs driver's license. Like I am all in for licenses for all, because I experienced this resonance used as both an organizing tool, an organizing strategy, and a spiritual practice, in saying when something in me resonates, then I love my community members deeper. And I may not, in fact, I know I will never understand the experience of being undocumented. I will never understand the experience of growing up in Tennessee. I'll never understand the experience, Shannon, that you have with prayer, right? I will never fully understand your experiences, but when something in me resonates, then I love you deeper, and I'm more committed to your liberation and mine, right? I know deeper that we are bound. And that's what feels so good about it too, is I don't have to understand your experiences, but when my tuning fork self was going like this, then it doesn't matter if I don't understand. Like I'm in it with you. I'm in it for licencias para todos because my neighbor told me this story, and now I'm in it with him because my tuning fork self said I was in it. And I think that's where some of that power is.
I love that it's almost like a breakdown, right? So you tell a whole story, and I mean the story in and of itself was fascinating and entertaining, and it had a beginning, middle, and end, and all of that. But when you asked us to listen for resonance, it gave me something. I knew that I didn't have to like make these big comments about the story and what we're doing in the world, all of this, but instead, all I had to do, like you said, was like feel. And I was like, first when you said, I was like, how will I know? How will I know when the tuning fork goes off? I don't, like, what if I miss it? It's that classic, like, until you experience it. But it was easy. Once I just listened, and then as soon as you said it, I was like, that was the moment, that was it. And it was so accessible, right? Because it was like, it was just, I only had to talk about that one thing. And yes, I see also how again, using that word reciprocal it is, right? Because both the person telling the story, feeling listened to, feeling heard, people adding on stories to that of, yes, I've also experienced that thing. But then, listening, learning about you and seeing the connections. Oh, it's beautiful. It's lovely.
Well, each listener is invited into the story in a different way. The story becomes yours in a sense. And I think of this as a tool for like conflict transformation. I mean, you talked about this a little bit, using this in communities where maybe people aren't seeing eye to eye. I think this is a powerful tool. I mean, we live in a very divisive culture right now. Like if we had more people engaging in resonance, particularly in communities where maybe folks are not on the same side of the political stripe or spectrum or faith side or spectrum, like maybe we could, love each other a little bit more, a little bit more deeply. And I'm very moved by it. I think it's such a powerful tool.
Yeah. I think so too. I think about that a lot in a time where I think one of the places where we lack skills collectively as a people is how we listen. And this is one of them. This is one of the tools of listening deeper and better. And I'm a believer that the tools in our toolkit are revolutionary and transformative. And this is one of those revolutionary and transformative tools that we have access to. And that is, Janet, I love what you said. It's easy. Our bodies know how to do this. We know how to do this, right? Our tree, nature connected selves know how to do this. When somebody says, okay, this is exactly what I want you to do, is listen to your body and see when your tuning fork self bzzz, and you can. And that is a really cool thing also to be, because this happened to me exactly. I'm resonating with what you were saying of like the first time I had to do this, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna know, like what's gonna happen. And then I just knew my tuning fork self did a buzz, and I was like, that's it. And it's cool to be caught off guard about knowledge that your body already has. That is a cool thing.
Martha, in your bio, I noticed you talked about storytelling. And so like part of that, so I'm also thinking about, you told this story, and I don't know how many times you've told this story before, and you probably had planned to tell this story, or at least knew that this was an accessible story that you could use. And so I wonder about, like, if you're just getting into this practice, how hard that, like like I was nervous that I wasn't going to hear the tuning fork in my body. Like, how am I going to feel when I'm asked to tell a story? And like, if there's any like tips or tricks for like how to tell a story that feels like, I mean, people can connect with anything, but what if you're scared to tell a story?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful question. So I will tell you, I love storytelling. And I think storytelling, both this listening for resonance and how to tell stories really from the heart, are two of the tools that are going to transform this mess that we're in and transform us through this apocalypse that we're in. And I really believe that. And so I think when I think about telling stories, so I have told this story before. I did think about telling this story to y'all today, because this story like I have so many feelings about this story. So for me, it's easy to tell the story through my own emotional experience because it's an intense one. This is also, this moment for me in this story was part of my call to ministry. And it's a very foundational story. And I didn't include that in my telling of the story in this round, but that was one of the moments where I said, I want that collar and that I want to do what they're doing. And that's like a different way of telling this story. So when I think of skill sharing and skill building for storytelling, my favorite thing is following tenderness. So when I think about the story, I think of all the places that make me feel the most tender. And then I linger on those. So I felt really tender when praying with people outside of a tradition I was familiar with, in a language that I'm only a little bit familiar with, in a setting that I had a lot of that is a tender moment in that story. Another tender moment is when I was watching people I loved get led away by the police. That is a tender moment. And so I linger on those. And storytelling is so nerve-wracking, for sure. And I think of sometimes when I'm practicing storytelling, I close my own eyes because that helps me just like be really in my body. And I think of where are the moments in the story where the most tenderness, and how do I follow those? And how do I connect to those? I listen to a lot of The Moth. I love The Moth, which, if folks don't know, is an NPR storytelling show. So I listen to other people tell their stories and how they follow their own emotions, how they tell their own emotional experience. And that makes me a better storyteller. And so that's helpful. So hearing other people's stories and then following tenderness. That's what I would say.
Yes, thank you.
So you're doing so much, Martha. You're clearly doing a lot. How are you keeping your cup full and preventing burnout? How do you make it sustainable?
I love it. I love that question. So one of the things I have learned how to do is to know what are the resources that I have access to that are cup filling for me. I am an extroverted, very extroverted person. So being around people I love is cup filling for me. So I get the amazing opportunity to belong to a super cool community of young adults in Boston called the Sanctuary Boston, which gathers to make music together. And now we get to sing sometimes outside, and it's awesome. And that is super cup filling for me. So getting to be in my community, doing things like singing together, making art together, those are really cup filling for me. And something that I've been working on with a lot of intention is the intentional spiritual practice of the cultivation of delight. And that has been really hard to do, but I'm working on that. And so, because I find delight very cup filling. And so I'm trying to do delight, things that bring me delight. And there's a lot of different things. And so I sometimes go through my life scanning for moments where I feel delight, and then I hold on to them and I try to revisit them and do them more often. For example, going into Trader Joe's and buying a bunch of products that have fun shapes on the labels is something that brings me delight. And so sometimes I will do that as a spiritual practice, just me in the Trader Joe's with all the fun labels. When they have moons and stars and animals, that's my favorite. So I get and then I have some really weird products, and then I try to cook myself something with the weirdest, most fun labeled products at Trader Joe's. And that brings me just delight. So that's one of my cup filling strategies, is the cultivation of intentional delight.
feel like it's a practice that we could all use. Like,
I will tell you, it is very hard to do. It is no laughing matter. It's extremely painful at times. So content warning for the practice of delight being a soul crushing one at times.
Oh,
That's a subject for a whole nother episode,
Yeah.
Martha. We got to have you back.
Let's do
That is
it.
too
Absolutely.
good.
Man, this was so fun.
It was
Trader
fun.
Joe's, if you want to sponsor us, by all means, we'll donate all your proceeds to,
That's what we need next. Sponsors.
A
Yes.
sponsorship.
and that money can go into these causes that we're lifting up on the show. You know,
Absolutely.
This is wonderful. And we're at 10 till, so we unfortunately do have to wrap up. I feel like we could talk for so much longer.
I
with you,
know, this
Martha.
was so wonderful. Thank you both for just doing this amazing, wonderful ministry and having me be a part of it. It's so wonderful to get to talk to you and to get to talk about some of my favorite things. So thank you for your time and the gifts that you're bringing to all of us. It's really, really wonderful.
Well, thank you for the gift of your presence. I really believe that I'm hoping that people will, I mean, this feels so accessible, and it feels like something that groups, especially if youth and young adults are watching this in groups, this is something that like a group that regularly meets could so easily do, right? Like every time you meet a different person, you choose a different person to tell a story, give them time to prepare and think about the story, maybe even write it out so that they know what they're going to say, like have a little cheat sheet or whatever, but then do this activity every time. I just feel like it will bring groups closer together. Building that.
are there
relationship.
resonance groups that you know about, Martha?
I don't know. Again, this practice came to me very much from the grassroots through Movimiento Cosecha, but I have used it in a lot of places. So, Chan, I think that's an amazing suggestion. And like youth groups and YA groups, if you're out there and you want to use this, like please do, like develop your own stuff around it. Like I have nothing proprietary about it. Like please take it and run. It's so easy it's accessible, it's easy, it's very generative. It brings people closer. Like you can take this practice and use it however you want, both in your life, in groups, as a community building, as a trust building strategy. Take it and run, let it have wings.
Martha, can you spell the organization?
Yes.
Because I feel like you might be saying it, and I want to make sure people can like Google it or look it up if they want to.
Yep. So it's Movimiento, movement, Moviento, and cosecha, harvest, Cosecha.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We want to give credit where credit is due. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, Martha, we're gonna have to have you back. This conversation is far from over, and this spiritual practice of delight sounds fabulous.
I would
love it.
encourage you to do it. You can start tomorrow.
Staff meetings, Eric. Let's bring that practice to staff meetings.
There we go. All right. Should I talk about our next episode?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So our next Just Breathe Live is Sunday, January 10th, not 9th. I said 9th earlier, didn't I? Whoops.
You did
10th
say
at
that.
5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, with special guests, recording artists Leah Song and Chloe Smith of the amazing band Rising Appalachia.
Amy says it is January.
Amy,
9th.
it is January 9th. Goodness gracious. See, this is where the script, this is a Ron Burgundy moment. Shouldn't have read the script. Okay. January 9th, with Leah Song and Chloe Smith of Rising Appalachia. Yes, Rising Appalachia will be on Just Breathe Live. Mic drop. We'll be discussing interdependence. We'll be discussing being young, the creative process, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe to this page. Follow us on Instagram at Just Breathe Live. That's 2 U's and Just, and help us spread the word.
And just to, like, I mean, we might as well like do another little name drop and say that our second interview of January is actually going to be with members of Sanctuary Boston, right? Am I making that up? That is.
I can't remember if they got moved to February.
Well, we're going to be
coming.
interviewing people from Sanctuary Boston.
Karishma and Matt will be joining us either in late January or February. That is correct.
Oh, okay. Yes, January 9th. It is time for our whoosh. It is time. So the whoosh, for people who have not heard our whoosh before, and Martha, who maybe you don't know about the infamous and famous whoosh, we end all of our episodes with a breathing out exercise. It's kind of a moving it through our body celebration. We're done. We did it. Also, when you're like Liz and I, and maybe a little bit nervous about the whole thing, or tired and hungry, it's really good to like move it through our body and release, right? So the whoosh, it just starts up here and we push it out, and it's just a really nice, wonderful sound. And I'm not going to mute this time. I usually mute, and then it doesn't work. So we're going to do it together. Ready? One, a big breath in. Whoosh. We like to be embodied too.
I loved it.
We've come close to the end here.
Yes, we have.
I'm getting sad. This is resonating. This whole episode resonates for me.
Bliss is modeling using the practice already.
So good.
It's so easy. I remember when you did it at Hugs. It was like boom. So what are you breathing in, folks? What are you breathing in? Share it in the comment section. Please share it so that we can pass on these practices, these beautiful practices like the whoosh, like resonance, acoustic resonance, and others, and spread more love and joy in the world, particularly with and for and in solidarity with our youth and emerging adults. So will you answer that question for us, Martha? What are you breathing in these days? What's keeping a skip in your step? Aside from interesting labels at Trader Joe's.
I'm going to look for those now.
The interesting labels, there's some good ones. It's a scavenger hunt with yourself. Find your favorite Trader Joe's products that have the coolest labels as the practice of delight. What I am breathing in, I have been thinking a lot about solidarity. I am thinking deep about solidarity, what it looks like and means. I'm trying to breathe in how I can be best in solidarity with my people. And for all folks who are struggling right now, so I'm thinking a lot about solidarity. I am breathing in some awesome energy and activism and power of youth and young adults in this tradition. I got to read a cool book recently about the history of youth and young adult movements of Unitarian and Universalist movement in like the 40s and 50s and 60s. And then I got to talk to some elders in my tradition who were in the liberal religious youth. And I just have been like living and breathing and thinking about this cool youth and young adult tradition that I get to be a part of. And that is just got me living in such a good tooting fork self. So if you want to breathe that in with me, I offer you the gift of this long tradition and history of youth and young adult activism leadership in this faith.
That's awesome. I do feel like that is the air that Bliss and I breathe.
Oh
like
yeah.
That's the air we live in. But yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Until next time.
Goodbye. Thank you again for having me.
Join us in January. Have a wonderful holiday.
Bye.